Welcome to the Goliath Sourcing Academy podcast, where we talk all things property deal sourcing, packaging, business systems, and outsourcing. Whether you're sourcing for yourself, packaging deals for others, or a bit of both, then you're listening to the right podcast. Get more strategies, tactics, and tips for sourcing killer property deals over at GoliathSourcingAcademy.com. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Dunsmore and Brad Lazarus.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Goliath Sourcing Academy podcast, session 10 of season 1. My name's Brad Lazarus. I'm here with Mark Dunsmore. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
How is everything, Mark? Are you how's the summer holidays for you?
Summer holidays are good. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about kids, haven't we? We've talked about the summer holidays and the...
You mean pesky kids?
the hassle that kids bring when it comes to not conforming with normal work time.
Oh, I mean, you know me, I'm like a man of set routines. I'm like an 85-year-old when it comes to my routine. I find it... And this dropping off at summer camps and all, it's just thrown me entirely. I don't know whether I'm coming or going at the moment, but how's it for you?
Yeah, it's similar. I think I'm quite fortunate that because Jill, my wife, is a teacher, she gets school holidays, so I'm not quite as involved with doing the carting around. But it's been good, I have to admit. I've had a few days of family time, and despite us being incredibly busy at the moment, it has actually been really nice to have 3 days of various different activities. Those of you that are friends with me on Facebook may have seen me tagged in things or checking in. And it's been nice. I have to admit that it's been really nice spending a few days with them without actually having to do that much in terms of work. I've been quite fortunate to be able to take a step back with Paul holding the fort on solutions and you doing what you do in the lab.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, what a lovely compliment. Is that the biggest... I don't even think that even classes itself as a backhanded compliment.
Oh, I don't know. I think that was a compliment.
Was it? Oh, there you go. A little chink of weakness.
Maybe it just came out wrong.
But, no, it is. I know what you mean. It is really not. And I actually think when I look at my schedule that goes on before 10 a.m. in terms of dropping 2 boys off at a tennis camp and a football camp, and my first thought is, oh God, I'm not going to be able to get to my desk before 10:15. And I thought, well, actually, you know what? I'm actually really lucky.
Absolutely.
I'm lucky that I'm able to do that, and it's amazing, and it's a privilege, really. So I need to look at the positives of that, and I do, and I have to say, and I'll complain, and I'll always do that little complaint, but actually, I think it's an amazing thing. So
yeah, it is.
And that's what property gives us, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And we were talking about it, weren't we, about how really you need to... You know, we are probably at one of our busiest times now with solutions and with the academy and everything else. And actually, you still need to find that time to have a break, remember what you're doing it for. You know, I mean, I'm sure many of our listeners aren't in the position to be young, free and single, no commitments, no responsibilities, travel the world whenever they want. You know, I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't have that luxury. And they've got families, they've got, you know, some still have jobs. And actually, you still need to be able to take that break. You know, someone actually said to me the other day, I can't remember who it was, I think it was one of my friends who said that holidays were introduced, was it in the Victorian times? And they were specifically brought in, same as weekends, were specifically brought in to have a break from work. You were purposefully made to have a break from work because it improves your productivity. So, you know, for everyone out there, especially when you work for yourself, the temptation is to just absolutely...
Just keep grinding
Yeah,
away.
you do. I mean, I find sometimes you're there working till... you know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, just sat on your laptop in the living room, and actually sometimes you need to just take that break. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know. So.
No, good advice. But I would like to unveil to the listeners a new word.
My new word.
This is Mark's new word, and I just saw it on our show notes that we prepare. Come on, Mark. Let's. What's your new word?
The new word for this week is propreneur, which is a property
That's you,
entrepreneur.
listeners. That's you. He's referring to you. You are now called propreneurs.
You are propreneurs, everyone. Propreneurs. And
so my first thought when I looked at that word, I said to Mark, hang on a minute, you've only got one P in there. Surely that has two Ps. And then he questioned the fact that I was questioning a word that had existed for 9 minutes. But it's propreneurs.
Propreneurs, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those of you that know that word is absolutely amazing and it's going to take off and are going to go and look at buying the domain, I'm afraid I have already done that.
It's gone. You were expecting so much demand. You thought before announcing it, I better get the domain sorted.
It is now available for sale on GoDaddy for £10,500 for anyone that wants it.
Very good, very good. Well, by the way, listeners, I've got the one with two P's in it.
That works.
So Mark's doesn't work. Mine does work. So you can have mine for 10,000. There you go. So that's well. No, listen, it's a new word. It's a good word. Let's see if it catches on.
Let's see it. If anyone wants to quote me on Facebook by putting a picture of me behind a quote mark and then put my name under it, I would be more than happy to be quoted on that. Propreneur. And I will just spell it for you. It is PROPRENEURS.
Very good. There it is, listeners. There it is. Okay, enough of us. Right, should we tell the listeners what we've got coming up on the show this week, Mark? We've got the Facebook group Q&A. Who's that from this week?
So this week's Q of the Q&A is from Nick. So Nick Russell, who is actually one of our latest additions to the Platinum Program. So welcome, Nick. I'm sure Nick's
welcome,
listening.
Nick.
But Nick's question was a really good one, and one that we probably do get asked a lot. So I thought actually it might, it's a good one to put out there in the podcast, which is when dealing with agents, at which point should you tell them you are sourcing? So which point should you tell them you are sourcing for clients, in effect? So a good question. So we're looking forward to answering that one.
Good stuff. Okay, and on Sourcing with Mark this week, seasons in the property industry.
Absolutely. So again, this is actually stemmed from a question from Mandeep. So thanks, Mandeep. And again, a really good point raised, which was with regards to sort of the property industry seasons. So what time of year, what specific strategies might work. So I just go into my experience from agency as to, the times of year, what happened in those times of year, when's a good time to market for specific strategies, when's a bad time to market, and that sort of thing. So it's a good one. It's an interesting one, kind of a different topic, not one that's probably covered by any other sourcing people.
Sources. Yeah, people.
So yeah,
be as generic as possible.
Absolutely.
With those other people. Yeah. No, that sounds an interesting one. Okay, looking forward to that one. Excuse me. And then in the lab with Brad this week is 8 essential steps to tracking your marketing to generate way more leads for far less money. So as you know, Mark, I like tracking marketing stats.
You do.
Yeah. So I just find the reason I like it, I love it, is because it when you track it, there's a great quote actually by a guy called Peter Drucker called "What gets measured gets improved," and I mentioned that in the segment. But if you measure stuff and you can figure out what's working, and you do more of what's working and less of what's not working, so the stuff that you do work on, you've got a huge amount of kind of conviction and motivation to drive through with it, because there's a huge amount of evidence there statistically that it's going to work. So that's what I really love. That's one of my main reasons for really enjoying stats. I'm not some kind of stat geek. It is for a bigger reason, really.
Yeah, you are.
You go, I am. So I think most people actually kind of intellectually know that they should be tracking all their lead gen campaigns and their marketing campaigns, but they kind of I don't think they're really doing it. So it's about how you can actually get into the mindset of actually doing it, and why you should be doing it, etc. So that's what I go through in the lab with Brad this week. That sounds like a good one for me. I love that one.
It is a good one, and it is. You're right. I think most people with stats. I think I would be safe to say that most people out there may have dabbled in stats, even just for like a week, couple of weeks, but then they go off the boil, and actually it's that longer period of stats to analyze that's going to make you a better marketer, isn't it, Brad?
Absolutely, and that is, I cover that in one of the steps in actual fact, so that's a lovely little segue there.
Oh, check that out. Check that out.
That's good. That's almost professional.
We should do a podcast.
Well, it's almost propreneur-like.
It is propreneur.
Anyway, right, let's get on with the show.
Now it's time for the Goliath Facebook group Q&A session. Got any burning property sourcing related questions? Tap into the minds of hundreds of property pros just like you inside our free Facebook group. Head over to www.goliathfbgroup.com.
Okay, everyone. So as we alluded to earlier on, just to this week's Facebook Q&A is from Nick Russell. So thank you, Nick. And Nick's question is, when dealing with agents, at which point should you tell them you are sourcing for clients? Now, it's a really good question, and possibly one that makes newbies a bit nervous about going in and dealing with agents. When you go and search for properties for yourself, you feel comfortable because you don't feel like, well, you're not lying, you're not pulling wool over eyes, you're not trying to be sly. And actually, what you do is you just go and look for yourself, and you feel comfortable with that. Now, which makes sense. When you're sourcing, sometimes what newbies get a bit nervous about is trying to cover up the fact that they are sourcing as a business. They're trying to find properties in order to package and sell to an investor. Now, my advice, first of all, would be just get over that, because there's no need to be nervous. There is absolutely no need to worry about what agents think. Agents don't assume that everyone's a sourcer, so don't think that either. But ultimately, what an agent wants to do is sell that property. Now, if they sell the property to you, or they sell the property to someone that's introduced by you, it doesn't really affect them. Their fee doesn't reduce, and if anything, it helps their chances of selling more property quickly. So, just remember that when it comes to working with agents. Don't worry too much about the fact that you're sourcing for clients, because it really doesn't matter to an agent. So that's a separate point. But with regards to Nick's question, when dealing with agents, the point at which you should tell them that you're sourcing can vary. So if you are looking at building a relationship with agents from the start, so let's say you are working your way through around local agents in your local area, and you've pinpointed, you've identified a couple that you want to work with closely. Maybe they were helpful, maybe they have gone out of their way to send you deals, maybe they are known to be a bit more accepting of creative strategies. When you're working with agents from the beginning, it makes sense to build that relationship on that trust level where you let them know, you work on behalf of clients, you buy properties yourself, but you also work on behalf of buyers, and there's going to be a relationship that you can build together, and that will ensure that relationship is a strong one. Now, in previous episodes of the podcast and also in the Facebook group, we go into building relationships with agents, and I only really recommend building relationships with maybe one or two. So for the other agents, there's no point trying to build up a relationship with regards to you being a property sourcer, because you'll just waste a lot of time. What you want to be doing with those people is you just want to be finding properties, you want to be viewing properties, you want to be going into those properties as though you are the buyer. So always go in with the mindset that you are the buyer. A, it will help you negotiate better, and B, it just means that the agents are still going to treat you as a buyer as opposed to a broker, where they might not be quite as helpful. And that is where telling an agent when you're sourcing for telling an agent that you're sourcing, you're going to tell them when it gets to the point where the offer's been accepted, you can then go and find your buyer. Ideally, you'll already have a buyer in mind. If you don't have a buyer in mind, you're going to have to go and find a buyer for that deal. Once you've found a buyer for that deal, that is when you can say, look, unfortunately, this particular property isn't for me. I've not been able to. You can just say something along the lines of something else has come up, which has meant that I'm not going to go through. I can't purchase this one, but what I have got is someone else who is going to buy that property, and then you introduce them at the point of instructing solicitors. So the agent won't care. You've obviously sourced it and you've packaged the deal to an investor, and the property sale will still go through. There's no reason why that wouldn't. So in answer to the question, just to sort of summarize, with agents that you're building relationships from the beginning with, I would say that you're sourcing from the beginning. With agents that you're not trying to build that long-lasting relationship with, so just general agents with properties on the market, go and view the properties, and once you've had offers accepted, once those offers have been accepted and you've got to the point of instructing solicitors, that is when you can explain that you've sourced that property on. So you've actually found a buyer because you weren't able to, or you don't want to pursue that one because the numbers don't quite work. So hopefully that helps, Nick.
Great stuff. Thank you, Nick. Really good question. If anybody else, if you've got a question, just get on to the Facebook group. You can go to the Facebook group at goliathfbgroup.com. That gets you straight to the Facebook group. If you're not a member, just ask to be a member in there. Just click the relevant link and we'll accept you and get your question in there. So, yeah, thanks again, Nick. And next up, we have got Sourcing with Mark.
Sourcing with Mark. Innovative and advanced strategies for doing better property deals.
Hi everyone and welcome to this session of Sourcing with Mark. Now, what I thought I'd do with this session, we're just in August, we're coming into the summer holiday season, and it made me think that the property market has seasons just like most retail environments. And knowing those seasons, knowing how the mindset of agents and sellers and landlords works will help you tailor your specific marketing messages to particular strategies in order to get the best return on time invested into your marketing activity. So what I mean by that is by knowing the seasons that I'm going to go through in this session, you're going to be able to focus your message specifically on those problems, which means you're going to get a better response rate to the marketing that you put out, so the letters or the emails or even just adverts, private ads, etc. You're going to get a much better return. You're going to be hitting people at the right time as opposed to catching them when they're not going to be thinking about what you've got to offer. So I'll go into the different seasons, the general seasons. So, you know, this isn't to say that for the rest of the year don't bother marketing, because that's not what I'm trying to say at all. But what I am trying to say is that at certain times of year you will get a much better response to certain messages. And equally, if you have a certain message at the wrong time of year, you're not going to get very much response. So I'll run through a few of the big ones. I'll run through sort of a couple of the messages that you can put out there to your sellers, property owners, or your landlords, and then hopefully this will help you get better results when you're sending out your material. So I'll work my way through the year from January through to December. So January, when I was in agency, January was probably the busiest month we had in the lettings department because a lot of people split up over Christmas. So some of you may be laughing listening to this, but I can tell you now that we were at our most busy in January for rentals with people who had split up over the Christmas break. Now, I don't know what it is about Christmas. I'm sure you've all had Christmases where it can get rather stressful. Well, where you and I may have fought our way through that and got over it, some people split up. So when they split up, what they do is obviously part of the couple is going to be looking for a rental property because, of course, they have to move out of the house. And then what happens is the other property, the property owner, so the person that stays in the property, is going to struggle potentially with their mortgage payments. So we have a double whammy here. We've got property people looking for property to rent. So, of course, if you've got rooms coming available in the January period, quite often will get filled with relationship breakdowns. But also, lease options are a great target for your marketing material in January as well. Now, of course, we don't know which houses are more likely to have relationship breakdowns than others, but what it does mean is that if you're putting out marketing material over the end of December, beginning of January, to properties that have maybe just gone on the market, so you may find that they've just gone on the market, they are the properties you want to be targeting. So portal scraping for properties that have just come on end of December, beginning of January, can be a good sign that that it's a relationship breakdown. Now, the other sort of lot of people is in students. So students have got three main intakes. You've got the January, February normal intake. So the beginning of the year is the normal student intake. You then have another one now, which is in April time. Round about Easter time, and then you have the last minute searchers in August and September who are panicking because they didn't sort anything out in January, and of course they're rushing around to try and find rooms. Now, what this means from a property point of view is that if you are trying to contact landlords in any of those times in HMO dominant areas, then the chances are that that landlord is going to have an abundance of inquiries, which means that a rent-to-rent offering is not going to be of interest because they know that they've got plenty of interest anyway. Why would they rent at less market rent when they could get full market rent from a bunch of students that are looking at that time of year? So trying to get rent-to-rent leads in January, February, April, or round about now, August, September, you may get them, but they are harder to come by. You may waste your time dealing with landlords who will just entertain you, but actually they know they're going to get the student intake. Now, if we flip that on the head, what we've also got then is we've got the period just after August, September. So September, October time, where these landlords that were holding out for the student rush is now gone. The university term has begun. The semesters have started. So that means they now have empty properties. What do? We send marketing material to those landlords with a very specific message with regards to empty properties. You've missed the student rush. We're looking to offer guaranteed rental income. Perfect example of how the seasons can work against you, but then can also work for you as well. So now the same goes, it's not necessarily just August, September, the April time rush, sort of the February to April time where landlords haven't rented their property for the next year. The more risk-averse landlords, so the ones that aren't prepared to wait until August, September, they are going to be looking at alternative solutions as well. So just remember that March, April time, probably a good time to be, just after, so April, May time, send those letters out and hopefully you'll be able to get some leads that way. Now, from a sales point of view, the most popular time when I was in agency for putting properties onto the market is spring. So round about March, April time, what will happen is the weather is technically meant to get better. It's meant to be much easier to sell property when it comes into we're getting into lighter nights. People are over the winter sort of spell, and now they're looking at what their plans are for the year ahead, and that is springtime is probably the busiest time for people putting their properties onto the market for sale. Now, what that means is if you're going to be going after BMV deals in March, April time, properties that are coming on round about March and April, again, I'm not saying they don't exist, but they are fewer because agents are going to be telling their clients that this is the busiest time of the year and they need to hold out. So again, let's flip that on its head. What that means is that come May, June time, when properties have been on for a few months, it hasn't sold in the busy inverted commas time. That means that we are going to be able to hit those people with a marketing message, haven't sold your property over spring, looking for a solution, have you found somewhere else? Because of course, when people put their property onto the market, what happens is most people will go out and have a look for stuff as well. And they may have found somewhere that they like, but they're struggling to sell theirs. So a quick solution that we offer could be on the cards. So remember that for springtime, just after springtime, send your marketing messages out and see if you can get them. Now, equally with property sales, summer, so the summer holidays, generally the month of August is a very quiet month when it comes to property sales. The reason being most people go away in August, it's the school holidays, people aren't really wanting to be doing viewings at their houses, they've got all other stuff going on. So it's a really good time to pick up a few properties. If you get your marketing material out during August, if someone's had their property out for a little while, get those letters out and offer for a quick sale before the schools go back, and you may pick up a few bonus properties that way. What that does mean, though, is when people start coming back from their holidays in August, the schools go back, and then the property market has another peak, so it just dips up again. That doesn't make sense. Rises up again in September. So because people are coming back from the holidays, they want to give it that push before Christmas. Properties go back on the market in September. So again, September time is probably not the best time to be looking for BMVs, but come November time, again, we're back into what I've just discussed about so towards the end of the year. And again, December is a very quiet time. So December is very quiet for sales. People are getting ready for Christmas. So that means people that need to sell have less people viewing through agents, so they're more likely to be open to suggestions in terms of alternatives or BMV offers. So that kind of goes on to explain the seasons. So what we've also got to remember is we have to remember to tailor our messages to those seasons. So you want to hit specific people with specific messages depending on the seasons that you're writing to them in. And the reason for this is whatever they're thinking at that time of year, if you can send a marketing letter that specifically addresses that point, you, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, you are more likely to get a response. So just to summarize, what I want to do is just remember the property market has seasons. It does work the same as a retail environment, so you have got peaks and troughs. You've got times where I would avoid sending certain material and times that I would promote hammering that material. You need to focus your marketing on specific strategies depending on what time of year it is. So for those of you that are setting up sourcing businesses who are sourcing for a variety of strategies, then remember the years, use the downloads, the content upgrade this session is an annual planner to show you the seasons. And just remember that this sort of knowledge will set you apart from other sources. This knowledge will allow you to focus specific messages, get specific results, and you will become a better sourcer for it. So remember, keep all that in mind, and as always, happy sourcing.
Excellent stuff, Mark. Thank you very much for that. Now, I have a question.
There's a surprise, Brad.
So listen, you go into quite a bit of detail about each of the seasons in the property industry and how this might affect sourcing activity, seller and landlord mindset, etc., etc. But what kind of advice are you able to give to our listeners with regards to maximising their lead generation in the seasons that you actually mentioned in that piece there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's one that I know probably a lot of listeners will be asking after the Sourcing with Mark session, which is the answer really is it's strategy dependent. So if you're looking for rent-to-rent leads, then you're going to have to follow the sort of seasons of rentals. So you're going to need to identify with landlords, when are the landlords going to be at their most pain, i.e. voids, properties are empty, they haven't found tenants. And then what you're going to do is you're going to want to catch them outside of busy seasons. So with rent-to-rent, perfect one is getting them in September, October when the students have all gone back if you're looking at multi-lets. Similar concept for BMV purchases. So again, if you're looking for BMVs, don't try and find BMVs in March, April time. These are all through estate agents for BMVs. So don't try and portal scrape during March, April, because the agents are going to be telling their clients that the property market's picking up, it's getting busy, more busy, so they're not going to be encouraging people to take lower offers. As that time goes on, as it's 3-4 months on the market, they are then going to start considering offers, especially potential more creative stuff, some more lease option type things, because they're going to have maybe found something somewhere else that they want to buy. And also July, August, again, it's a really small window, but it's a window where if someone's had their property on the market since spring, it's still on in August and it's gone very quiet, that is when you want to be hitting people with your marketing for a BMV purchase as well. And also, I would say lease options, January, February time for the divorces, relationship breakdowns. Really, that is, I mean, the big reason for that, of course, is that you're targeting specific types of people at specific times. So, yeah, maximizing your lead generation across the seasons depends on the strategy, but the best way to do it is actually on the content upgrade this week. What we've done is I've put a diary, like an annual planner, with the types of strategy and the types of year to go after. So hopefully that will help people on their sourcing journeys.
Oh, that's a nice one. I didn't know you'd done that. That's very good.
Full
Excellent.
of surprises,
Good.
me, Brad.
Full of surprises. Not only new vocabulary, but very good resources to download as well, which is fantastic. So,
the surprise.
Just full of surprises and such creativity. So
we could add a new segment to the podcast actually now. Word of the week.
No,
I'm going to make up words now.
So, sorry, I think I might have interrupted you there. Were you at the end of that?
That was the end, yes.
That was the end.
Don't worry, yeah.
Okay, no more. Okay, good stuff. All right, well, let's move on. Next up is In the Lab with Brad.
In the Lab with Brad. Marketing, systems, and outsourcing hacks for property pros.
Hi and welcome to this episode's In the Lab with Brad. 8 essential steps to tracking your marketing to generate way more leads for far less money. Now, have you heard the phrase, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it? And what gets measured gets improved. Now, both quotes are from a guy called Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker was one of the 20th century's great business thinkers and visionaries. Now, what he meant by these quotes was that you can't know whether or not you are successful unless success is defined and tracked. Now, with a clear metric for success, you can quantify progress and adjust your process to result in your most desired outcome. Now, without this, you're always guessing. Personally, I hate guessing in business, and particularly at property marketing campaigns. It leaves me feeling like there's a big canyon of the unknown if I guess. Now, it seems much smarter to me to make my decisions based on informed and intelligent data that I've collected up until that point. So it begs the question as to what you're doing to track and measure the KPIs, or the key performance indicators, of your seller, landlord and investor lead generation campaigns, so that you can measure their performance and make clever decisions about how you can improve them each time. So here are 8 essential steps to ensuring that you've got your lead generation efforts tracked, always improving and making you money with less and less marketing spend. So step number 1 is develop a concrete definition of what a lead is. Now, a lead is not a lead until you define it as one. So is a lead someone whose details you've scraped from Gumtree and sent them a message? Or is a lead someone who has contacted you, you've spoken on the phone, and they've shown a genuine interest in what it is that you have to offer? Now, a lead may also be defined differently depending on which source it comes from. Now, it's up to you what set of criteria you will use to define a lead. But by having a set of criteria, it means that you can easily compare the effectiveness of future campaigns on a like-for-like basis. So step number 2 is track the lead source. So you may have a few campaigns running simultaneously. So knowing exactly where your leads come from is vital to understand what's working and giving you the best response. Now, it's important to try and be specific here. So if you're using social media to generate leads, then you should try and define which platform the lead has come from. Was it Facebook? Did it come from a post on your personal profile, a group you belong to, or an ad you placed? You need to keep track of what actually caused these suspects to raise their hands so that you can better determine what works and what doesn't. Now, if you don't capture the source, you have no way of figuring out what's working. So step number 3. Track the campaign that drove the lead. Now, at a high level, marketing starts with a campaign. A campaign is a collection of marketing activities all grouped under one umbrella. So a campaign can range from, say, a direct mail campaign sent to 500 addresses, or it can be that you decided to attend 10 networking events over a 2-month period. Now, the resultant leads that you generate should be attributed and grouped under their respective campaigns. Now you can see the effectiveness of the campaign and make an informed decision whether to run with similar campaigns or not. So step number 4 is track the life cycle of the lead from source through to deal completion. Now, knowing where your leads come from and which campaign you created to generate them is one thing. Knowing what revenue and profit came from the lead source and the campaign is what's really going to give you the info you need to make informed future decisions that get you a better return on investment. So, for example, you may have generated 10 leads from one direct mail campaign and think that's a great result. But what income did it bring in? If it cost you £500 to generate those 10 leads and you convert 2 and you make £6,000 in fees, that's a very healthy 1,100% return on investment. But let's say that you have another campaign that also cost you £500. You generated 20 leads, but you didn't close any. Now, without proper tracking, you can get easily lulled into thinking that the second campaign that generated double the leads was more successful. However, since you've tracked the life cycle of the lead from source through to close, you know the real numbers and can make informed decisions moving forward. So step number 5, systemize the data collection. Now, a big part of getting to grips with tracking your lead generation campaigns is to move from intellectually thinking and knowing that it makes sense to do it and is a good idea to actually developing your own culture of tracking. So part of the process you go through whenever you set up a campaign is to know what you're going to be tracking, how you're going to track it, where you're going to record the data, and how that data is going to be useful for you. Now, it means every time that you get a lead, you ask how they heard about you. You make sure that you record that information so that you can easily access it and, more importantly, use it. So step number 6. Use one sheet to track everything. Now, your data inside a notebook or on 15 different post-it notes dotted around your office or where you're working isn't going to help you. You can initially make notes about incoming leads in a notepad or a post-it, but you must transfer that data from one place. Or to a campaign tracking sheet. Now, as the added bonus for this particular podcast, I've included a template marketing tracking sheet, which you can go and get at goliathsourcingacademy.com/session 10. That's /session 10. So step number 7 is use a CRM system. Now, a far superior solution to using a tracking sheet is to use a CRM system or a customer relationship management system. Now, I won't go any deeper into CRMs, as I do that in session 7, which I highly recommend you listen to. So you can find that at goliathsourcingacademy.com/session 7. And finally, step number 8, create accurate reporting to measure ROI and be better informed as to future marketing spend. Now, this in a nutshell is why we track the data that I've laid out here. There's no point in collecting all this lead and campaign data if you're not going to actually use it. So this goes right back to the central theme of the Peter Drucker quote that I mentioned earlier. What gets measured gets improved. So if you implement the previous 7 steps, then you've cracked the measure bit. Use the data to make better decisions about where you'll spend your time and your money moving forward, and you've cracked the improved bit. That's when you'll start generating way more leads for way less money. Anything else is just a guess.
Fantastic stuff, Brad. Thank you for yet another riveting in the lab. Now, stats, you are the stats man. You come up with stats that I didn't even know existed.
Yes.
Now,
we've shared many a screen looking at a spreadsheet, haven't we?
Yes, we have, which is good. I mean, we joke, but actually, like we talked about earlier on in the podcast, actually, it is so important.
I think your eyes used to kind of like glaze over, didn't you, until you realised the significance of what the stats could tell you.
Yeah, I mean, they still glaze over when you're explaining them, but I listen to the important bits, which actually is the patterns and it's the maximising return, isn't it? And I mean, I suppose in terms of, talking about stats, I mean, the level of detail that you need to go in with the stats, it can't be underestimated, can it? I mean, we're joking a little bit about it, but actually the importance of stats and the importance of the time period of taking those stats is so important. And obviously, I know you have stats on everything and spreadsheets upon spreadsheets and sort of trends upon trends. So can you give us, the listeners, an example of when the tracking has helped you make decisions on one of our solutions campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think, a direct mail campaign, for example, we were mailing to HMO landlords, and we had multiple, mail outs going. So I think we sent, it was 4 mail, I know we sent 4 mailings, and what came up, having looked at the stats, that it turned out that actually the 4th mailing had a better response than the 3rd mailing, and unless you would have tracked the response rate from that mail out, you wouldn't have known that. So you would have maybe stopped at the 3rd, or if you hadn't, so ultimately what it comes down to is the 4 mailings becomes your benchmark. That's what you've learnt by tracking those stats. So that's at the very kind of top level. I mean, I go into a lot more detail in the segment about the steps that you should be taking to understand how to gather those stats. But I think even if you look at now Facebook ads, the level of tracking that you can get to and the granular kind of detail that you can get to inside the Facebook ad manager is amazing. So you can kind of track the click-through rate on ads, the conversions, even at the segmented audience level. So what interests people have, you can track the conversions and the click-through rates based on their actual interest level. So, every single day I'm inside the campaigns, kind of tweaking them, changing things, ultimately with the goal of increasing the response rate and ultimately getting a better return on the investment that we get from what we're spending, because no one really wants to spend any more money than they need to. And if you are, then stop doing that really. So so I think that is, I could go into so much more detail about this, but we haven't really got the time, and I went into a bit of detail about this in the segment. But I think ultimately knowing what your numbers are and what story does your numbers tell, what story does your stats tell you? And that's what you should be looking at. You should be looking at, as you mentioned before, you should be looking at kind of trends. What are the trends telling you? And then you make your decisions based on those trends. So ultimately, it's all there to get you a better return on investment. So does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. I think, and it's not promoted enough, I don't think, in the property world about actually, everyone tells you how, different ways to market for leads, different ways to do this, different ways to do that, but actually,
they say marketing is marketing is really a numbers game, and you can't play the game if you don't know the numbers. So you've got to know the numbers in order to play better, really. So I think you're right. I don't think it is talked about, the numbers. There's lots of strategies thrown out there, but nobody's really kind of going, well, what are the stats telling me? Is this strategy to the right one? Is it not the right one? And you'll only know that when you track it.
And the other thing is that a lot of listeners out there, and this is what we come across regularly, is that, as I was when I first started, you're on a tight budget. You haven't got £3,000-4,000 a month to hammer all the different marketing methods. So the best way to minimize your marketing spend for maximum results is to make sure that you're spending it in the right way. You can only get that by monitoring results. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the case in point at the moment is we're running some new Facebook campaigns in solutions, and you can that can rinse your wallet pretty quickly if you haven't got an eye on those numbers at all times. And you're tracking them, and you're tweaking, and you're changing, and you're stopping. You're moving your budget around to make sure that you're not spending on things which aren't getting you good click-throughs or good conversions. And so, yeah, absolutely, totally agree. So, good stuff. Well, look, we've got a couple of great resources this week. You mentioned yours, which was the Goliath Annual Planner with property seasons and best times for strategy-specific focus. Said that well, considering that looked quite challenging when I started reading that sentence. So that you can get, and mine I've got for the downloadable resource this week is a marketing tracking sheet. So that should get you going on actually making sure that you're tracking all of those numbers we keep talking about. So you can get those at goliathsourcingacademy.com/session 10. Now, we've also got some news, haven't we? We didn't mention it at the top of the show. We're going to take just a short break, aren't we?
Yes, after discussing it at the beginning, we are going to have a summer holiday.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So I think this is a good, 10's a nice round number to close off season 1. But stop crying, listener. We will be back.
We will be back.
So I think we just need to kind of recharge a little bit throughout August. We're both going away for a couple of weeks. And
not together.
No, not not together, yeah. And we'll be back beginning of September. I think we're going to hit we really enjoy doing this podcast, so we'll hit the ground running again when we come back beginning of September.
Absolutely.
I suspect. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, great. Well, look, if any of you listeners out there are really enjoying getting value from the podcast, really, I think Mark said this in the last one as well, please do let your friends and other propreneurs, is that right? know about.
Yeah.
Please do let them know about the podcast. More important to us than getting a great review on iTunes is that you share it on Facebook. That's what we'd really love you to do. So just grab the link, goliathsourcingacademy.com/session 10, and do share that on your Facebook feeds. I really would appreciate that if you're getting value from it. Anything else, Mark?
No, I think that is a perfect way to round off the 10th session of Season 1.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll leave you to say goodbye.
Remember, everybody, Have a very good summer. Make sure you all take a break. And as always, happy sourcing.